Okay, so next show is T.P Bon. I know this is a Studio Bones show for Netflix. Might be based on an older anime property, and I think it's sci-fi. Bones, don't let me down. Well, I gave it the good old college try, and I got some ways into it, but boy, this script is fundamentally flawed. 7 Ways to Sunday. I got 4 episodes into T.P Bon, which is short for Time Patrol Bon, which, yes, it is a reboot of a series. I don't know when the original anime aired, but the manga ran in like the mid 70s, apparently. So it's a time travel series. From Masahiro Ando, no less. The guy who did like Sword of the Stranger and Hanasaku Iroha, Oh Maidens of the Seventh Season. I think there was Snow White with the Red Hair, one of my favorite shoujos. So a director that I have a lot of respect for, and do you know what? On the directorial front, like on the putting the show together front, it's a damn good show. It's some CG builds aside that are not particularly great. The general like shot composition and framing is pretty solid. They do as much as they can with the dated look of the character designs. And you know what? They're not bad looking. It's just a matter of, do you like that type of character design or not? I'm kind of on the fence about it. I will say that Reem, the main girl in the series, is very cute, so points for that. And it's generally paced really well. Everything flows together nicely. It's apart from the actual story, this is a well put together anime. Now let's talk about why the story is fucking stupid. So it's a time travel series about, you remember Time Squad? You remember Time Squad? Similar to that, where it's basically like we have the Time Patrol, which is basically like they go through different parts of history and save insignificant people from dying. Like, they can't save significant people, but they can save insignificant people. Which is an interesting premise. But then they're like, okay, here are the rules for what you can't, you can't mess with time in this way, you can mess with it in this way. And, like, one of the rules is you cannot, like, physically force someone to go some way or whatnot. You cannot, like, physically move them. Except they break that rule in the second episode. Even though the rule is established, I believe, in the third episode. I think. It's either established in the third episode or it's established in the second episode, and they just immediately break it because, like, this old lady passed out on a tree branch in the middle of a flood, and they just move her body somewhere else. So they just break the rule immediately. Either they break the rule immediately, or they break the rule and then establish that the rule exists so that they can't do it anymore to make the story more to make the situations more complicated to resolve. But you already broke the rule. So, okay. But then there's, like, a bunch of different rules about, like, how much you can mess with the environment, how long you can stick with a person to keep them alive, just, like, all the microman... And then they go into, like, the butterfly effect of, like, Bon kicks a rock, and that leads to a guy who got hit by that rock finding a kid in a well who grows up to prevent World War III. So, like, that's a great display of the butterfly effect. But, again, they are saving the lives of people throughout history. And it sort of, like, gets into this matter of, like, well, whose life is significant? Like, what level of significance does someone have? And in the 4th episode, they save the life of someone from 800 BC who is, like, traveling to a different continent and presumably is going to have children with people who he meets on that continent. And that, like, that being, like, he ends up in Japan. So, you have just created an entirely new, massive branch of lineage. Thousands and thousands of people are going to result from that person not dying. I would call that significant. Who knows how many prime ministers are in that line? It's like this issue of, like, where do you... They save the life of a pyramid builder in, like, 3000 BC Egypt. I would call that fucking significant. So the rules make absolutely no fucking sense. And that's immensely fucking frustrating. And then the cherry on top of all of it is that this is like an edutainment kind of show. And I'm not a if I'm just want to watch a show, I'm not in it for the edutainment stuff, because this is it's very rudimentary, like, oh, and this is how they built the pyramids, and this is how traveling, like, navigating the Pacific was like before modern technology, and so on and so forth. And it's very obviously, like, set up that way, and I'm just... all of the stuff that they presented was stuff that I basically knew already. So I was like, well, I'm not learning anything here. I don't think I'm going to learn anything here. So it just comes across as like, look, you're learning something. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. So, sorry, Ando Sensei, but I'm gonna have to pass on your latest work. Bit of a shame. Okay, T.P Bon coming off the list. I realized while I was watching that I apparently missed a pair of movies from the spring season, Kurayukaba and Kuramerukagari. They're both like an hour long, so... and I guess they went up on Crunchyroll at the beginning of April or something. So I'm going to dive into these right now to see if they're worth adding. Okay, well, those were some interesting movies, to say the least. I don't fully regret watching them. I just watched, what is it, Kurayukaba and Kuramerukagari, which are these are just each 1 hour movies that are not quite flash animation or like based on rigging, but there is definitely a lot of that in it. It is not like a fully drawn like series where it's like each frame is drawn or whatever. There is definitely a lot of like use of like rotating assets or just sliding them across the screen. So I guess right away the visuals are certainly something. Like, aside from that, there's actually a lot to say about the visuals, because this is going all in on like a sort of steampunky kind of aesthetic. A lot of gears, a lot of steam, a lot of it's very, but it's sort of set in like, it feels like a kind of 1900s, early 1900s kind of setting, which I believe is kind of late for steampunk, and that's more diesel punkish kind of area, but it is the technology that seems to be steam based, at least from what I can tell. So it's kind of just a meshing of those two in a way that I'm not entirely opposed to. I kind of, despite the animation shortcomings, I do kind of like the aesthetic of the series. I think the color design rides a fine line between looking really cool and grimy and looking really gross and grimy. It really lies. Okay, it rides the line between me saying it looks grimy and that's cool, and saying it looks grimy and that's kind of off-putting. Especially with like the color palette, it's a lot of yellows and tans mixed with like greens and like browns and reds and stuff. So I would say the aesthetic is probably the most contentious part of the series, mostly because the stories are kind of nothing, but we'll get to those. I kind of like the character designs. They're a little basic, and like the hair's like a little too rounded sometimes for me, but like it's sort of tapping into that like almost like this is anime, this is food, I'm eating food, what the fuck am I trying to say? It feels like something cool looking. I guess the character designs, they're fine. Kind of surprised by the voice acting talent in this one, and I looked it up. Like, fucking Tomeo Kurosawa plays one of the main characters in the first film. The main character in the second film is Ayane Sakura. And I think, who else was in it? Fucking Aoi Yuki was one of the side characters in it. I was shocked by the amount of voice talent in these series. And that definitely makes sense in hindsight, knowing that Kurosawa played this one character in the first movie, because I was like, oh, I like her. She sounds cool. I like that voice. It's like, I can zero in on her now. Speaking of sound, the soundtrack is like very, what do you call it? Like, roaring 20s kind of jazz big band soundtrack stuff. And sometimes it can be very overbearing, like, and sometimes it just rears its head completely out of nowhere. Like, especially in the second movie, especially, there were like 2 moments where there were just like brass stingers like out of nowhere, and it was just like, what? I got jump scared by a fucking trumpet. So these are movies that are like really leaning hard into like the aesthetics that they're trying to do, because the stories aren't particularly noteworthy, and on the whole they're kind of confusing, really. Like, I don't really have a firm grasp, like a complete grasp of what was going on in either movie. Like the ending of the first film, I just don't understand fully. Like, there's this circus that was abducting people, I guess, but then they got away at the end, and the main character's connection to the circus, through his dad, I don't fully understand. And a lot of they definitely rush through a lot of this. Again, both of these are a tight hour. And there's probably a whole film's worth of information in them, like a whole feature film's worth. Like, these could have been like an hour 20. And you could have like really stretched out some of the scenes more to let the let the atmosphere of the scene really settle in. But again, based on the animation, I guess they probably couldn't do more than that. If this had gotten like a full film treatment, I think at least the first film could have been good. Because it's like a kind of detective story. The main character's pretty likable. Both of the main characters in these films are pretty likable. And he's just like this kind of gumshoe kind of detective guy, just trying to figure out the mystery behind what's going on in this town of his with these weird abductions. The second movie, I liked for like the first 20-ish minutes or so, and then it suddenly became like anti-labor. Not necessarily anti-labor, but it frames the bad guy, the miners who are at the bottom of the social ladder and are constantly fighting for like better wages. They mention explicitly they suddenly become the bad guys who are trying to take over the city. And they're like portrayed as like unquestionably the bad guys the entire time with no sympathy whatsoever, and so like you are kind of forced to root for the law enforcement and the rich like overlords of the city. And it's like, no, you lost me there. None of that. And there's also like a kind of love story in the second one, which I was hoping would be like cute and sweet, but they just, again, these movies are so rushed that it didn't really land with me. So I guess like there are literally moments where it's like they're cutting the audio too fast. They're like, cut to cut, it is moving too fast because they're just jamming in as much information as possible, and it is a significant detriment to the film, especially in the second one. Also, I don't know if this is entirely related to the substance or anything, but it took me 3 days to watch the first film. I just kept falling asleep. I think it's just because I was tired, but I should at least mention that. Wild. Yeah, there's really not a lot to say on the story front, really, other than it felt rushed, but they are like, I will say they are compelling mysteries, at least. The second one, not quite as much as the first one, because, there really isn't a mystery in it, other than, like, what's going on with this plot to overthrow the city or something? Whatever. So yeah, I would recommend the first one. It's fine. The second one is not good. Okay, so I was debating on whether these counted as one entry or two, but since most of the anime logging sites I use separate them, I am also going to separate them. So Kurayukaba is going to go up in the number... Nope, come on. It's going to go in the number 27 spot. No, I don't want to autocorrect. Fuck off. Going to go in the number 27 spot with a strong 6. Pretty decent. And Kuramerukagari, unfortunately, is going to go all the way at the bottom as number 36 with
a decent 4. Very unfortunate, but oh well. Okay. Back to the summer season stuff. Up next is Terminator Zero, which is I guess, a prequel to Terminator or something. Maybe. Maybe not. Got another anime based on a Western property. Let's see how it goes.
So that was just T2 again, right? Okay, that's like a massive oversimplification, but I got 2 episodes into Terminator Zero, and that's my takeaway is that it's just combining a bunch of stuff from other Terminator movies without anything really to add other than like general Japanese sci-fi existentialism. Now, I actually watched the first 2 Terminator movies for the first time in preparation for this one, just because it was a good chance for me to finally get around to watching these. Really liked them a lot. I fucking love the first one. I'm more of a T1 than a T2 guy as of now. But I'm definitely not a T0 guy because the characters are so uninteresting and bland. It's like the only character that aside from the dad just being fucking angry all the time about trying to stop the apocalypse, which understandable, but he has like no character outside of that. The only character who has like a personality is the oldest son, who's like a tech head. He's like super into messing with gadgets and stuff. The other 2 kids really don't have a personality other than like happy or shy, reserved, sad. The babysitter who's I immediately clocked as Saori Hayami, has basically no personality. She might have some kind of dark past to her, but she's just kind of bland. Eiko, the human that they send back in time to apparently stop Malcolm from who's the dad, from building a weapon, has no personality whatsoever. Like, again, it's T2. They send someone back in time, and it results in them trying to stop a black guy from creating a technology that will destroy the world. It's just T2. And it's like they tried to create some kind of like relationship, like some kind of human empathy moment with Eiko, like with this other like red-haired girl in the future, but it's fucking nothing. And like there's a scene where the red-haired girl tries to protect the kid from a Terminator, and she just like covers him and starts glaring at the Terminator as it's pointing a gun at her. I'm like, you're a fucking soldier. What the fuck do you think that's gonna do? That's fucking stupid. You could have just picked up the child and tried to run, you dumb bitch. Sorry, that moment made me unnecessarily angry. But yeah, it's like, and then there's like the stuff that it just takes from T1, where it's like human gets sent back in time and doesn't have any clothes, so she steals clothes from somebody. It's just a retread of Terminator stuff with really nothing new to add other than like Malcolm is like talking to a computer program that he's trying to create so that it will stop Skynet, but the computer program's like, aha, but have you considered that maybe humanity is not worth saving and that you're all a bunch of warmongering assholes? And I'm so goddamn sick of this trope, because there are only 2 answers to that question, And only one of those is narratively satisfying, which is, yes, humans are evil, but humans are also good. I'm so tired of this point. And if this had, like, come, like, maybe at the very end of the series, or as like, sort of a side plot that's not, like, the crux of the main plot, I would have been fine with it. But not as, like, the main plot in a show where all the characters are so fucking bland and boring. It does look good, though. This is a production IG joint, and it looks good. I have nothing to add. It is like Be the Beginning good. Like, it looks really fucking good, and there's, like, some pretty good gore in it. A lot of blood, a lot of dead people. So if you... No, I'm not... Yeah, if you just want to, like, watch Terminators kill people, I guess you could watch this for that. But, man, it's just so not innovative or original in any way. And maybe that has to do with the fact that it doesn't have... It's... All of the director and all of the animators and, like, storyboarders and stuff are, like, Japanese working at production IG. But everything was written by an American writer who was Mattson Tomlin, I think. And I looked him up, and he hasn't done anything that I'm familiar with. Apparently he did touch-ups on the Batman. And even the music was done by American composers instead of Japanese composers. So maybe that's why I have, like, really nothing to say about the music other than they used the Terminator theme. If you're gonna have an anime of Terminator, why wouldn't you just let them do an anime spin on it and give it to, like, a Japanese writer to do, like, Japanese Terminator? What's the fucking point of just outsourcing the animation? It's fucking stupid. This was boring. We're moving on.
Okay, Terminator Zero coming off the list. Next up is Garden of Remembrance. This was a Naoko Yamada short film that they showed at Cannes, I think. And it finally came out on Blu-ray in Japan, which means the rips of it finally came out. So I am ready for some more Naoko Yamada. Let's do it.
That was definitely not what I was expecting, but also exactly what I was expecting in a lot of ways. I just watched Garden of Remembrance. Just as a warning, you should read the synopsis for this short film before you watch it. Like, normally I don't bother reading the synopsis for anything because I just want to see what the property I'm watching shows me. If I had to... See, I don't even know how much of a flaw this is. I'm going to say it's like a slight flaw in that there is no hand-holding of the audience at all in this film. If you are, like... This film kind of does not work fully without the description on, like, my anime list or something. Like, you kind of need to read what it's about. You can either read what it's about before or after. I didn't read about it until after. You could probably read about it before. It's only an 18-minute short film, so there's really not a lot to spoil. Well, there kind of is. But, like, anyway. Now that I know the context of it, a lot of this film makes a lot more sense, because like it starts with this very like repetitive kind of this repetitive sequence of waking up in the morning and eating, brushing teeth, going out, so on and so forth, and like with slight variations of like the food in there, and we have like this what looks like a young girl just going through the motions of like the morning, and like it's sort of this repetition like really starts to like build up on you, but then at one point like there's a scene of her drinking like alcohol. I'm like, she does not look old enough to be drinking alcohol. What's going on here? My interpretation of it, I have not read any discourse on this short film online or anything, because this is a story about memory, like remembrance. It is a story about remembering your youth and the explosive emotions that you experienced in your youth. So what I think is happening is the actual character is currently an adult, but she is sort of viewing herself as a child, sort of remembering what things were like when she was a child, sort of. And it's why we don't really get a shot of, like, the very last shot of this is, or I guess technically the second to last shot, is of her as an adult. So that's when the memory part ends. The rest of the film is like her remembering her childhood and remembering this romance that she had with this boy, and the explosive and powerful emotions that young love brings with it. And with that interpretation, I think this film does really well in what it's trying to set out to do, in being a tone piece on the remembering how much you felt in your youth. Like, I like that it starts with this like repetitive kind of almost droning like repeat of the daily routine until she opens a door and presumably she sees something or she hears something that makes her, that triggers this flood of emotions coming back to her. And that's when like the music like explodes into this massive like melodramatic rock opera-esque piece. It's just this, it's big and bombastic. It feels like epic. It is like the audio for this is great. And by the way, there's no dialogue in this at all. The only dialogue in this is the vocals of the backing track for this. Like, that's the only dialogue in this film, is the lyrics, which are much more symbolic than narrative, and I think that's a good choice. Just expressing emotions rather than story. And the visuals that go along with that are, I would say, extremely good at expressing those emotions as well. Like, this is not like a squeaky clean production, which I don't think you can expect from Science Saru anyway. That's the studio for this. The character design, not the designs, but the character artwork is a bit rough. The backgrounds are slightly abstract, but it's just like there's a little bit of like imperfection to everything, and I think it adds a nice bit of texture to this. It gives it like a nice indie feel to it. Like I don't know what this technique's called, but where it's like the outlines sometimes they'll be like wobbly, kind of like the outlines will like shift on like a steady sequence or whatever. You probably know what I'm talking about. So it gives it this nice kind of indie animation feel to it. And once we hit that sort of emotional explosion, just the vibrance of these past, like, it's not like every fucking color in the world. It's a very specific set of colors. And they managed to make these like reds and whites and blues and purples just so incredibly gorgeous and vibrant. And it's just really just this is probably one of the better tone pieces that I've seen in a very long time. Not that I see tone pieces very often, but this one's definitely real solid. Again, you're gonna have to read the synopsis to understand what's happening, because like there's a third character in this that you will not know who she is at all if you don't read the synopsis. She's supposed to be the main character's childhood friend, and seeing her triggers like a memory of something. So, and again, she is viewing her as she viewed her when they were kids. So like everyone's a child in this until like the very last shot. And I think the very last shot is like it's very bittersweet and very like just a little bit of a knife twist right at the end. Just like sort of a life goes on kind of twist at the end. And I'm not going to say what it is, but I think the implication is kind of obvious. Especially if you read the lyrics that precede all of it. So, yeah, bravo, Naoko Yamada, you've done it again. It's good stuff.
Okay, Garden of Remembrance is complete. We're going to put it, where did I decide? Right here. We're going to put it in the number 14 spot with a strong 7. That was a very fun tone piece. Alright, just one more from this initial batch of the summer season stuff before the season actually ends. Kimi ni Todoke Season 3. I binged the first 2 seasons a little while ago just to catch up so that I could watch this. Yeah, let's just jump into it.
Alright, at long last, Kimi ni Todoke has returned. Just finished up Season 3 of Kimi ni Todoke. Good times. Very good times. Which is good, because if it was anything less than really good, I don't think it would have been worth slogging through Season 2 for. If you're unfamiliar with this franchise, Kimi ni Todoke is a rom-com series from, what was it, 2009? I think the first season came out. It was either 2009 or 2010. I didn't watch it until just recently, but I'd known for a while that the second season was infamous for being riddled with stupid misunderstandings and such. And you know what? They were only slightly exaggerating with how bad it was. This season 2 is one of the moments where I was like, oh no, the fandom's kind of right. This isn't good. Now, if you're still looking to get into this franchise, I will say, in terms of like season 2, episode 6 is like the low point of quality, and it starts to like slowly rebound after that. But anyway, season 3 picks up, spoilers obviously, with where season 2 left off, with Kazuhaya and Sawako finally becoming a couple. And just sorting, and this season is basically them sorting through all of the emotions that come with being a newfound couple and trying to navigate this treacherous landscape of being overly cautious with your partner. And on top of that, we got some really great stuff with Ayame and Chizuru. All of the ships are finally falling into place. Weirdly enough, I actually liked the other romantic subplots in this more than the lead subplot, which doesn't sound like a rating endorsement, I guess, but like there's some really damn good stuff in here. Like this whole, I was skeptical of the Chizuru Ryu subplot because it's like it's turning childhood friends into lovers, and there's always the specter of they don't have to be in a relationship just because they're a boy and a girl. They could still just be friends. But I think the way that it was resolved around these two was very sweet and very well thought out, and really laid out the whole trajectory of, yes, they actually should like at least try to be romantic with each other. And that's one of the things I appreciated on sort of the visual end with it, with Ryu, who's this very stoic, doesn't really show his emotions that much kind of guy, but like everyone throughout the series is kind of like, this guy, I can't get a read on him. Is he pissed off? Is he angry? Is he sad? What's going on? And through the entire time, Chizuru is just like, how can you not tell what he's feeling? It's written all over his face. And it's like, you can see it. You can see, especially when it's like from her perspective, you can see like the very subtle differences in like his expression sometimes. Or maybe I'm just reading into it. But I like that they were just, it's subtle, but it's there. And Chizuru is the only one who's able to pick up on it. Meanwhile, we have fuckboy Kento back in the mix. Fucking, I'm gonna be honest, I was not excited for him to be Yano's boyfriend at the end of this season. But you know, especially because of all the fucking dumb fucking bullshit in season 2. But you know what? They pulled it off. He comes off without like rewriting his character in any way. He is the exact same dude that he was in season 2, just in a completely different circumstance where him acting that way is actually beneficial to the people involved. Yano in particular, with who has this plot of like, man, it must be nice for you guys to like feel these butterflies in your stomach and stuff when you see someone that you like. I have not felt that. And I like the way they presented this. Again, this was another one where it was sort of treading the line of like, are they doing this just because they want to make a point about Yano being promiscuous and that being bad or something? But no, that's not really the angle that they attack it from. It's more so that her being promiscuous is like a byproduct of just not. Well, actually, she's not even that promiscuous. It's just the fact that she dates around constantly, just trying to find anything that makes her heart skip a beat, I guess. And she just hasn't found it, and not being able to find that is, in this season, it finally boils over for her. And then we have Kento swooping in, being this dashing gentleman, and the resolution to that was just very fun. A lot of really strong resolutions in this season, and a lot of like characters that I initially I thought were like, what the fuck are you doing here, are finally turning around and being useful. Like the teacher Pin, he actually comes across as like an adult for once, and is like helpful instead of just being this obnoxious asshole. So I liked the turn that they gave for him. It's just like, he's still an obnoxious asshole, but he's starting to show his wisdom a little more as well. So that was fun. The only character who still sucks is Joe. Joe sucks, which I get is the point of his character. He's just this like fucking klutzy, unaware, loudmouth idiot. Doesn't make it any better when he's just constantly ruining shit for everyone. So I do not have any more love for Joe this season than I do in the previous two seasons. In fact, I'm pretty sure I like him a bit less. So that gag is still there, but oh well. Oh, I completely forgot to mention that this season's only 5 episodes, but they're like 65, 75-minute episodes. So they are like sort of like prestige TV length episodes. Sorry. Excuse me. Like they are taking full advantage of this being a Netflix exclusive and not having to conform to TV time regulations, which I was a bit skeptical of at first, because it's like, man, do they have to be this long? Because I'm not like. One of the things that I like about anime is that the episodes are relatively short. Like, we're not getting into near movie length time most of the time. But I will say the pacing in these episodes was pretty damn good. Like, especially like the last 3 episodes, the pacing was just really damn good. Did not very rarely noticed the time that how long the episode was going on. Very rarely noticed that. So I think that was a smart decision, a good decision in the end. I'm not sure if it was ultimately the best decision, but I'm not gonna say it was a bad it was not a bad decision. So good on them for that. But of course, the main star of this series has always been Sawako and Kazehaya, these 2 immensely insecure teenagers. Oh boy. It sounds like I'm about to shit all over it. I'm not. I'm going to shit over one very specific part of it that made this quite a bit more frustrating. but aside from that, like they actually feel like they're like the relationship part was actually very fun to explore how they get closer and drift apart. It's how their relationship kind of fluctuates in the beginning. And what was I gonna say? Damn it, I lost the thought. And just how how incredibly scared they are of scaring the other person away. I think that made the tension still stick around as opposed because like a lot of the opening of this season is just like fun romance slice of life stuff, which is cool. Totally on board for that. But then they add in like the more dramatic elements as the season goes on with how fragile this relationship appears to be, with especially as like Kazahaya starts to like shut himself off a little more as the series goes on. Like at one point, there's some rando who doesn't even have a name is like, I thought they broke up already or something because of how obvious the distance is between them. And I was like, ooh, man, that fucking hurts for Sawako. And she shows that finally. Like, she finally has her big, fuck it, I'm gonna say what I want. And fuck you if you don't appreciate me right now. This, her big explosion in the last episode was so immensely satisfying of just her going like, tell me what the fuck is wrong. Please. I can't fucking take it. Which is, relates to the one thing about their relationship in this season that I don't get. Like, in Kazuhaya's words, he's obsessed with cherishing her and that he doesn't want to, like, ruin things with her by going, like, too fast, I guess, or just not being able to control his impulses. And it relates back to him, like, just constantly thinking that he's not a good person, which I don't know how he gets this idea in his head, because absolutely no one has told him this, and none of his actions suggest that he is in any way not a good person. Like, it's obviously it is meant to be like this is all in his head, but as the audience, seeing that this is very much all in his head, and that there is nothing in his life that could have possibly suggested it to him, it's fucking frustrating. And I just don't know how he got this idea in his head. Like this, other than like the whingy, choony bullshit of like, oh, I'm actually not a good person. I'm selfish and I could hurt you. And it's so, like, I understand it, but it's not enjoyable to watch. Like, it's not intriguing to watch. It's a fucking slog. And, fuck it, I had something else to say, but just this, like, their relationship, like, it takes them 6 months to go from we are in a relationship to that now we're gonna kiss, which is an insane length of time, even by Japanese purity standards. Like, that's the other thing. I was like, there's this show sort of has some some hints here and there of this weird, like, it doesn't show up that often, but like there's this weird Japanese purity culture thing going into this with how relationships work. It was like, took you 6 months to kiss her, man. What the fuck? So that was frustrating. Again, just because they explain it in the show doesn't necessarily mean it's a good explanation, and it doesn't make it fun to watch or interesting. Because like, fun is such an ambiguous word that it doesn't make it interesting to watch. I'm going to say that. It doesn't make it compelling to watch. So yeah, but aside from that, I actually do think they have like really good chemistry with each other, especially when they finally get to the point of like, we just need to fucking talk to each other and talk this shit out, which is very much the not moral, but like main theme and message of this show is you need to open your fucking mouth and say what's on your mind to your partner. And I think this show does a really good job of conveying that idea. But yeah, so yeah, we find the relationship by the end of this season finally seems like it's on solid ground for the most part. So aside from those bits and pieces of stuff with Kazahaya, I actually did kind of enjoy the arc of this relationship, just this fragility and that nearly falls apart, but then finally comes together at the end. Is good. And then I guess I could briefly mention on the visual end. This is still a really good looking show. It is slightly different in aesthetic from the first two seasons. Not surprising since it's been over a decade, and I believe the director is different. I forget what the name of the director is from the first two seasons, but it's the same guy who did My Little Monster and The Great Pretender. I don't know who directed this season. I'll have to look it up later. But I believe it's still at Production IG, maybe? I'm not sure. Actually, that might not be true either. But anyway, the season looks really good. But I will say this season is a lot crisper looking than the first two seasons. Like, there's a lot more definition to the or I guess sharpness, I should say, to the character outlines and stuff, and like how the character designs are constructed. Whereas the first two seasons, there was like a little bit more of a diffusion, a little more softness to everything. It could also be that the Crunchyroll uploads of the first two seasons were not in 1080. That could also be the issue. That's definitely a possibility that I'm not going to rule out. But at least that's what I'm seeing as a difference in my head. And it's not like a negative. I'm not saying this as a negative. Like, it is just a slightly different aesthetic choice. If I had to pick one over the other, I would probably pick the earlier, like, softer aesthetic. But the new series still has, like, a lot of pros to it. Again, it's very crisp and clean looking. The character designs are really solid. The color direction is still really solid as well. There was only... Sometimes it looked a little too saturated at points in some of the earlier episodes, but like the way that it plays with color to convey the moods of these scenes in these very blatant shoujo-y kind of ways, it was very affecting and worked really well, especially in some of the like heavier moments. Like there's this moment where Kazahaya literally like pushes Sawako's hand away, and the like background just transforms into this like blackness with these dark reds and blues splotching it everywhere. And I was like, I found that very affecting and just like immediately grabbing me and going, ooh, that doesn't feel good. Something feels wrong here. To convey the torment in Sawako's mind at that moment. Very good choice of color design there, and just yeah, it looks really good. The yeah, color design's good. Background art is pretty solid. Um, there weren't quite as many moments where I looked at it and went, wow, that's fucking beautiful, like I did in the first season. But there are definitely some of those moments here and there. Um, yeah, the show's really good. My only, like, minor, I guess, as a final minor complaint, I think they use background music a little too much. Like, it could do with a little more, well, I don't know. Maybe just like a smidge more silence here and there. Maybe it's just because like I notice the background music all the time because they're very catchy tracks. So I guess I just notice them a lot. Whatever. But yeah, I'm happy that I pushed through season 2 to get to season 3. I believe there's still quite a bit of manga left to cover. I think there's like 12 or 13 volumes left to cover. So we're gonna, if this was popular enough to get renewed, then we're in for quite a bit more Kimi ni Todoke content, hopefully. I would not be opposed to watching more.
Okay, Kimi ni Todoke Season 3 is complete. And where did I decide I was going to put you? I'm going to put you right above Garden of Remembrance. And you're getting a light 8. Happy that this series is back. Okay, and that about wraps up the movies and OVAs segment of this video. So join us next week for when we dive into the rest of the summer season. We got almost 50 shows to delve into, so see you next time.